it is Jen with Mother Time. Today we're gonna head into the craft room to do some crafting. This week's craft theme is the old mill, inspired by this beautiful new sign, the old mill that I recently got from Olive Branch Farmhouse. I absolutely love this sign. It comes in 4 sizes. This one is the 30 by 15. And you guys, it is canvas, but it looks like an old sign, and I love the way it looks here in my dining room. I'll include a link for it in the video description if you're interested in this sign too. It inspired me to do this free printable collection that you can get on my blog. I'll include a link for it in the video description. There are 4 designs in 4 sizes, 2 label sizes, a 5 by 7 and an 8 by 10, so you can simply download, print, and frame for easy peasy decorating, or use in craft projects like I'm gonna show you today. If you love primitive and rustic, you are gonna love these ideas. And if primitive and rustic is not your thing, you can adapt these to whatever style and decor you like. So grab yourself a hot cup of coffee or hot tea, sit back, relax, and let's get to crafting. First up, I cannot wait for you to see how I transform this $11 lamp from Walmart. I'm going to cover the lampshade with some homespun. You could do this with any kind of lampshade. I use the seam on the lampshade as a guide, and I'm going to roll it from one side to the other once the seam gets to the other end to make a template. So first I go over the fabric a couple times, making sure I have enough fabric as it rolls, and then I slowly roll it over the fabric. I'm just using a Sharpie on this darker fabric. You could use a brayer, you could use a marking pen, and I again use the seam as a guide. I start at the one end, and once the seam gets all the way down, I roll it back, tracing on the other side. Once I roll the lampshade back to the beginning, now I'm going to trim that excess fabric, leaving an inch seam on each side of the lines that I drew so I can roll that fabric underneath the lampshade. You don't want to have too much fabric because you would see it when you turn on the lights. You just want a little bit, enough to tuck over. Now, if you want to make a nice straight edge to roll it over a little bit so the lines are nice and straight on each side, go about another 1/4 inch, so maybe 1.25 inches. I didn't do it for this project. I just went 1 inch over on each side. Now I'm going to use some starch, spray my fabric with starch, and press it really quick. Here are some other marking tools that you could use as well, but I just used a Sharpie so I could see my lines. And now I'm going to just make sure my fabric fits well before I spray it with some spray adhesive and attach this fabric onto my lampshade. I'm trimming the excess fabric, but for this I will roll it over just a little bit so it has a nice seam in the back. Now I'm using some spray adhesive and I'm spraying my fabric. I'm protecting my surface just with some wax paper just so it doesn't spray my mat with some adhesive as well. And now I'm going to roll the fabric on top of my lampshade. You want to make sure it's nice and tight so you don't have any little bubbles, but here I'm going to roll that fabric too on the back, just so there's a nice straight edge and it's not an unfinished looking edge. And then I'm rolling that fabric underneath the lampshade too, but that's where you don't want to have too much excess fabric. You can see on the top I have a little bit more than I usually do, because when you turn the light on, you're going to see that kind of shine through. So you want enough just to roll over, just to cover that top edge. On the bottom I had it perfect, but I did go a little over on the top. But this is how it turned out. Just like that, I have a beautiful homespun lampshade. And this is how the lampshade looks on the base, but I am not done yet. Now I'm going to paint the base with several coats of chalk paint. I'm just using Cottage White by Folk Art. I get it at Hobby Lobby. I add a coat, I'm going to dry, add a few other coats. I kind of want it gloppy and thick because I'm going to sand it down so it looks distressed. And the first coat is always for coverage. So once I get that coat on, I'm going to dry it. Now you could even add a little Mod Podge on top as well as you're applying some coats, and then add the paint on top. And then that also gives like a little bit of a crackly look too. But I'm just adding some paint, drying it, adding another layer, drying it, adding another layer. And I'm using, again, chalk paint, because you'll see here once I add several coats, and I'm not even like making sure it's nice and perfect. I kind of want it, like I mentioned before, gloppy a little bit, because I'm going to be sanding it down because I want this to look old and distressed. Once there was enough coverage and it was on there pretty thick, now it's time to break out the sander. I just have my little sander here. I will link this one in the video description. It's from Amazon and I love using this tool for crafting. And now I'm just going to go over it in spots and start chipping and sanding away. And you can see here how it distresses it and gives it just that really chippy distressed look as you see coming through there. So you definitely need to put in a little bit of elbow grease to sand this, but it's worth the end result. I'm just using a baby wipe to kind of wipe that sanded part away. And I just keep working at it until I get the desired look. You can see here how it's turning out. Isn't this cool? I love this. Wait till you see how it looks with the homespun lampshade on it. And then I'm also going to add one of my labels. Look at that. Isn't it pretty? And if you sand too much at one point, like I did here, I didn't like the way that looked, just paint over it and continue sanding or whatever you want to do. So you cannot screw this up at all. So now I'm just taking a little torn homespun, of course, and tying it around the base. And then I have this coffee label. How cute is this little lamp for a coffee bar or coffee tray? Wait till you see how this turns out. And if you have a spot where you don't have an outlet, you could just use one of those battery operated light bulbs if you don't have an outlet to plug it in. So I'm just tearing it. Now what I like to do is kind of just make a nice edge and then tear my label. I just used regular copy paper to print this free label that you can download for free on my blog. I'm also using my little sander just to kind of distress the edges before I attach this label onto the lamp. And one thing I meant to do was go around the edges of my label with some of my antiquing wax just to distress it a little bit. I forgot to do it. I was getting too excited to attach the label onto the lamp, but I wanted to at least mention that idea to you. So now I'm applying a light coat of Mod Podge to the back of the label and then attaching it to the lamp base. And look at how great that looks. Don't you love it? I mean, instantly transform this. Now I'm going around and adding a light coat of Mod Podge to the top of the label as well to the rest of the lamp. I love the way this project turned out so much. I'm already thinking ahead of making these for fall and Christmas. So stay tuned for that. But such an easy way to make a seasonal piece with this $10.97 lamp. That includes the lampshade and the base from Walmart. Look at how great that turned out. I cannot wait to make more of these too. I already have some lamps waiting in the wings to make these for seasonal projects too. So I'm just drying it really quick with my dryer, attaching my homespun lampshade, and look at how great this turned out. Don't you love it? I absolutely love the way this project turned out. And you will see how this looks at the end of the video along with the rest of today's collection. Next, I'm going to show you how I make my grunge that I use on so many different projects. I've shared this before, but I'm making a batch to use on the rest of today's projects. So the base is hot water and instant coffee. Then I also add cinnamon, vanilla, a little bit of baking cocoa, as well as brown sugar. You could also scent it with some essential oils or fragrance oils too. I'm using like a butter rum fragrance oil for this, but it smells like a cinnamon hot cocoa. It smells so good. I give it a good shake. I do refrigerate it when I'm not using it. You want to shake it because it does settle a little bit, especially like the cinnamon. So just shake it up a little bit. And I'm going to be using it on these flour and sugar sacks that I'm making. I trim the top off and I'm going to soak these bags. I got these bags at Dollar Tree, but I got these at a Dollar Tree that was temporarily closing. So everything was 50% off. So I got these bags for 62 cents. I felt like I hit the jackpot when I went to this Dollar Tree. But I love doing this when I want to grunge up and distress any kind of craft paper. So you don't have to use it just on these kind of bags. Any kind of craft paper that you want to make it look old and distressed. Look at how these bags are turning out. Now I also have a little bit of my Mod Podge mixture with the coffee that I also add to the bag too. And this is going to make the bag stiffer, as well as I'm going to spray it with some spray starch too. And that just really stiffens the bag, that along with the Mod Podge just, you can use regular Mod Podge. I'm just using my coffee one, where I just take a little bit of coffee, instant coffee, as well as my grunge and mix it together. I always have this in my craft room, but it just gives it like a darker look too. So if it's coloring basically my Mod Podge essentially. So I just add a little bit of that grunge to I have an aluminum pan, and again, you can do this on any kind of paper that you want to distress to make it look old. But I'm using it on these Dollar Tree gift bags to make these like flour and sugar sacks. But again, try this on just regular paper and let it dry. Wait till you see how this turns out. I'm also taking just a sponge here too to kind of make sure I'm getting it all over, because I don't want it too saturated. That's why you see just a little bit in the pan, and then I'm spreading it on, and then I'm going to let these dry. Now on a hot summer day, I'll let these sit outside and let them bake outside, which I always talk about doing, but I'm going to speed up the process and dry these with my dryer too. But you can see here how it's drying. Doesn't this look like an old bag? I love doing this. Like I said, I'm also spraying it while it's still damp with a little bit of my spray starch too, and then speeding up the drying process. Now, what I also like to do is kind of go over it as it's drying and add more layers, so it looks just old and distressed. I love doing this on so many projects, and if I just need some distressed looking paper, I do it on that too. You don't have to do it just on these gift bags. So now I am tearing out these labels that I'm also going to attach to make these flour and sugar sacks. And I just quickly tear my labels like this. I just make a nice edge and tear it, just old school, you guys. It makes it super easy, and it gives it that gently torn look. And then I'm going to attach it to the bags with some Mod Podge. Speaking of which, I will include the quote-unquote recipes for my grunge in the video description. I know I didn't give you the exact measurements, but you can find those in the video description. So I'm just going to cut out these labels, so to speak, tear out these labels, and then I'm going to apply a light coat of Mod Podge to the back and attach them to the bags. And here is the first bag. Look at how great that turned out. It still needs to dry a little bit, but it'll dry as I set this aside once I attach the label. So a light coat of Mod Podge, and I'm attaching it to the lower part of the bag because I don't want it to interfere with what I'm going to do on the top part of the bag. And look at how great this looks. Don't you love it? I'm going to press it in really well, and then I'm going to do the sugar one. These were inspired. I mentioned last week's video, as well as in another video. I went to this primitive market, and there was just so much cool primitive decor. I saw similar items like this. I'm like, I can make something like this. So that is what these are inspired by. And then when I went to Dollar Tree and I saw those bags for 50% off, like I mentioned, it was like I hit the jackpot. I talked about it over in my Instagram. I was showing some things that I got that I'll be sharing in different projects. But I got this 3-pack of bags for 62 cents. I'm going around the edges with a little bit of Mod Podge just to seal in that label. Look at how great these look. Now I just am using some rice. I'm putting it in some plastic baggies and putting them in the bottom of these bags just to kind of weight them down a little bit. You don't have to do this, but I'm also putting them in the bags. So if the bags were to ever rip, they're pretty sturdy, but just in case, I don't want to have rice all over the place. But so I add that into the bags, and then I'm just going to use some stuffing, which is from an old pillow. I love using old pillows that I've thrifted or just old pillows I have on hand, and adding stuffing to each of the bags. I'm also going to add a little bit of my fragrance oil into the bags as well. And you could use whatever you have on hand to fill these bags. I just always have an abundance of the stuffing from old pillows that I save. So if you have an old pillow laying around before you put it in the garbage, take that stuffing out and you can use it on craft projects. So now I'm just sealing up off the top with some hot glue, kind of just folding in that edge there and tucking it in, and then adding hot glue. And look at how great that turned out. I love it. Now, I also had an idea too. You could not even seal the top. You could add some faux flowers, and look at how great that looks too. I love that. But just for the look I'm going for, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm keeping both of these the same, but I wanted to give you that idea that you could even just use this almost like a vase, a container, to put some faux flowers. You could use Sweet Annie, or you could use whatever you have on hand to fill that bag. I think that would be really great, and I actually plan on doing that with another one too. But for today, I just wanted to share that. I'm also going on top to just distress that top a little bit with a little bit of my little sanding block, just to get off any of those edges too. And now more fun begins. I have my Mod Podge coffee mixture. I'm adding it a little bit around, sprinkling it with instant coffee. Now you want to make sure it's nice and fine, so you can see with my fingers, I'm kind of using that to kind of break off any chunks. And sometimes what I like to do is I'll take some of that instant coffee and actually grind it first so it's nice and fine. You want it nice and fine before you sprinkle it on top. So adding Mod Podge, then sprinkling it with just that instant coffee, and then you want to dab Mod Podge on top. And that's when it dissolves and the magic happens, and it gives it that perfect, primitive, rustic look when you dab the Mod Podge on top. And that's when it kind of just dissolves. So you'll see here, you can go as thick or as light as you want. Like looking at it just like that, I think it looks great too. But I went a little heavy-handed. I like it just like that, right there. Doesn't that look great? But I continue to add more. So again, you can add as much or as little as you want. So Mod Podge, sprinkle it with some fine instant coffee, dab Mod Podge on top, and then set it aside to dry. Let the magic happen. And these are going to look like old, grungy, primitive sacks. And I'm doing the same thing for the sugar sack. I'm applying Mod Podge where I want to add instant coffee, and then sprinkling it with the fine instant coffee, and then dabbing Mod Podge on top. Also like to wear rubber gloves to get my hands into the project and really rubbing it in, and then just going around, and you can add as much or as little, but I really like to rub it in and press it into. It gives it more of an authentic look. Dabbing more of that Mod Podge, sprinkling it with the fine instant coffee, and don't forget to do the back and the sides of the sack too. So on the back of the sides, I just do it very quickly by adding a coat of the Mod Podge and then just sprinkling it quickly with that instant coffee and letting it do its thing. I'm not being too specific like I am on the front. And then I was contemplating actually doing the labels too. So I'm adding some of my grunge to the labels too, just so it kind of all blends in with the rest of the sack. So you can see here with and without the coffee on the label. Let me know in the comments which way you like it better. I couldn't decide, but I ended up doing the sugar one too, just so it matched. I don't think you could go wrong either way. They both look great, but I just think it gave it more of an old look by grunging up the label too. So now I set them aside to dry, and once they are good and dry, now I'm going to add some accents to them. Now you don't have to do anything, but of course I got to break out a little bit of homespun. Now you could even make it look like a little bag and add some homespun. You could add some Sweet Annie. I'm just making some little rag homespun bows, just taking a couple pieces of torn homespun, and then I take a little piece of homespun just to kind of tie it in the center, just like that, and then hot gluing it to each of the sacks. And then I'm going to add also a little bit of Sweet Annie to one of them as well. And you can see here with the homespun on top of each of them, I think that looks really cute and simple. To the flower one, I'm just adding a little bit of dried Sweet Annie just to kind of jazz it up a little bit, so to speak. And I'm just hot gluing it there. And this is how they turned out. This is such a fun project, and I love the way these look. These are so cute, tucked anywhere in your kitchen, and I'll show you at the end of the video how they look all together. Next up, also at Dollar Tree, on my fun Dollar Tree run when I got everything for 50% off, I found these little stacking boxes. Well, they're not stacking boxes. That's what I'm going to make them into. They're just like the birthday boxes for little gifties. I bought a lot of these too because these are great for so many different projects. So be prepared. You're going to see a lot of different projects. So first, I'm just adding a quick coat, very quick coat of paint just to kind of cover them up. This step is not 100% necessary, but just the way my mind works, I wanted to have them covered a little bit. I felt that especially with the lighter colors that it would show through. I just wanted to cover them. You're not going to see this at the end. It's not really impacting this project at all. If you want to skip this step, if you decide to make this, you can, but at least do one coat. I did two. but at least do one just to kind of cover them. And you'll see here how they look just like that. Aren't they great? So now it gives you a nice base to do a really fun stacking project like I'm going to share with you here. So I'm going to paint each of these different to make these look rustic and primitive. For the bottom, I am doing, or the large box, I'm doing just a black paint. I'm going to give them this, for the black, I just did one coat, and that was what was great because I had the base already applied. I just had to do one coat of black. I'm doing just the box and the lid, and then I'm going to do a beautiful yellow for the middle box, and then I'm going to paint the white, or the top one white. And then I'm going to set those aside to dry. You could do whatever color matches your decor, but I just love the way the three of these look together. I'm going to distress them as well a little bit. So now I'm applying a coat of white paint. For this, I'm using chalk paint actually, just because that's what I had on hand that I was able to grab. But whatever works for your decor, adding a quick coat of paint on top, and then I'm going to distress them once they are dry. Once the boxes are nice and dry, now I'm going to distress them with a dry brush, just going around the edges and wherever I feel like I want to add a little bit of distressing. I'm using Folk Art paint in the color Iced Coffee. And again, making sure I'm doing the edges and just a little bit here and there, adding a dry brush. And again, the beauty of this is if you add too much or you don't like where you added it, just then go back over it with the colored paint and then kind of fix it up. But I'm just going around the sides and the edges, just giving it a very distressed look. And you can see here, I wanted to kind of just tone that part down a little bit. So I'm just going over it with a little bit of the black, just to tone that down. So if you find where you went a little heavy-handed like I did there, or you just don't like how it looks or where you applied it, just go over it with a little bit of paint, and then I continue to distress it a little bit more. And I'm just putting a little bit of paint on my brush and then taking most of the paint off just to give me a very dry brush with a little bit of paint. So now I'm doing the same thing with this box. Again, just going over with a dry brush, just adding that distressing, and I'm going to do the same with the white box too. And here are the three all together, all done and distressed, but I'm not quite done yet. I wanted to show you how that looked if you want to just keep them just like this. I think it looks great. But I'm going to go in and add some of my old mill labels, but I'm going to cut these down a little bit. So I'm doing the coffee, the tea, and the sugar. So I cut some of the labels. This is the larger 4.5 by 5.5 labels that I'm using. I'm just cutting them down, adding a light coat of Mod Podge to the back of the label and attaching it to each of the boxes. And here it is with the old mill coffee. Now the same goes like I did for the lamp. I forgot to distress the label. I wanted to add a little bit of antiquing wax. So I'm actually going to go in and do it on these, but I forgot to do it on this one at first. I'm actually going to add some Mod Podge to the box, just a very light coat too, just to seal it all in, all the paint that I've added, as well as on top of the label. And here I am taking my antiquing wax and going over the label too, over the Mod Podge. On the other ones, I don't do that. I added before, but just kind of going around the edges, adding a little bit of that antiquing wax. Don't you love this? Even if you just did one, you don't have to do all three, but wait till you see all three. You could just maybe just do one. If you want to just do a coffee box to go with the lamp for your coffee bar, I think would look so, so cute. But here I am doing the next label. You can see I'm adding my antiquing wax to the label before I attach it. And I'm just going around the edges, distressing it. You don't even have to do that. But I just think it gives it more of a distressed look, then applying a light coat of Mod Podge to the back of the label, and then attaching it to the box. Look at how great this looks. I love, love, love the way this project turned out. And you would never know that these were originally little birthday boxes from Dollar Tree. This is such a fun project. So again, adding a light coat of Mod Podge on top of the label and around the box just to seal in all of that paint too. And then I'm going to do the last box and I'm going to apply the sugar label. Same thing, tearing it, then applying some of my wax around the edges, and then adding a light coat of Mod Podge to the back, and then attaching it to my box. Here it is with the label attached, then going over it with a light coat of Mod Podge, and then also just applying a light coat of Mod Podge around the entire box too. And here is the sugar one all done, along with the fine tea and coffee labels. I'm going to add the sugar on top for some cute stacking boxes. And look at how cute these turned out. I love, love, love this. Like I mentioned, this was so fun to make, and I love the final result. So now I'm going to make some little fine tea bag bowl fillers. So I'm using the small fine tea label, but I did print out several copies of this to make these as bowl filler, just for such a cute little kitchen project. And wait till you see how this turns out too. Then I just have a roll of craft paper from Dollar Tree. You could use some craft paper too, but this is just from the roll. And I am trimming it down, tearing it like I've been tearing everything else. I'm doing 3x4. You can make these a little bit bigger. You could even use the bigger labels, but I wanted these to look like the little tea bags that you're actually going to like put in your cup, because I'm going to put these in a little basket too. So I'm just tearing all my sheets and tearing even the paper just so it all has that torn look. Then I'm going to grunge the labels up along with the paper and attach them, add a little bit of filling. So I cannot wait to show you how this cute project turns out. Here's everything all cut out, my labels as well as my paper. Now I'm going to add a coat of light Mod Podge on the back of the label and attach it to one of my torn sheets, and then add a little bit of Mod Podge on top. Then I'm taking a little bit of my grunge, putting it in my aluminum pan, and then pressing the back of the label so you can see just a little bit of that grunge comes to the top. I'm also grunging the back part of the bowl filler too. So there's the front and the back. I'm going to set them aside to dry. I end up putting them on just a drying rack just so these dry. But now I'm doing this one as well, getting all of the paper nice and grunged up using my grunge. So you can see I'm pressing not the front of the label, but the back of the label, and it kind of comes through. So it's going to give it that old grungy look. Once they're all done, you can see how that one looks. Now you can set these aside to dry, put them in the sun to dry. I'm speeding up the process and using my heat gun. I'm also going to spray them with a little bit of starch too. This stiffens them, but also keeps them nice and flat too. And I spray that starch when they're just a little damp, and then going over it again, heating with my heat gun just until they're nice and dry, because you want to make sure they're dry before you attach the hot glue, or the hot glue won't stick. But here they are all drying. Don't you love the way they look? Now you can make these bigger too using the bigger labels. That's what I just shared. But I just wanted to make these look like old little tea bags that you would dunk in your little cups. So now I go around the edges with some hot glue, keeping a little opening at the bottom, and just to add a little bit of stuffing, like the quote unquote tea. So I'm first just going around with the hot glue, going around all three edges, leaving a pocket in the bottom to add my stuffing, but I'm just kind of doing an assembly line. And I love how each one looks a little different, don't you? Look at that. A little bit of stuffing goes a long way. That's just acting like the tea. Adding a little bit of fragrance oil too. You could add cinnamon, whatever. I'm just using that butter rum. That's what I have on hand. And then hot gluing the bottom to seal it closed. And just a little bit of that stuffing. They don't want them too filled. And this is how they all look. But of course we have to add a little bit of to dunk the tea. So I have a little bit of homespun, but I wanted to show you some options too. You could just make a little bow if you wanted to. You could even add the homespun before you attach the back and the front together. But I made a little hole and a little bit of torn homespun just to make my little, how I would dunk my tea. This turns out so cute. I'm also taking the end where I tied it and kind of just wrapping that to the front too. And there it is, I'm dunking my tea. I just think this was so cute. So I'm gonna finish the rest, but this project isn't done yet. Look at them all done. How cute are they? I love this filler. Now I have this wire basket, also from Dollar Tree, but you're not gonna know this was from Dollar Tree. I'm kind of just pushing in the edges to make it look old, like an old little basket. Great, just like that. But now I'm gonna distress it too. So I have some Deco Art paint in the color Cinnamon Stick, and I'm going to lightly go over it with some of that paint too, just a very light brush of paint. If you go on too heavy, you can just go over with that spun brush and take that excess off, and it's going to make this look like an old wire basket. You can see here how this basket is transforming into an old rusty looking basket. You would never know this was originally from Dollar Tree, would you? And now I'm just taking my heat gun to speed up the drying process. There's just a very light coat of paint on here, so this is going to dry really quick. And the perfect base to add my fine tea filler, little sachets. So first you can see just adding them into the basket without anything, how cute they look just like that. Voila, cute and simple. I love it. But I'm going to take some of the extra paper that I grunged up along with some Sweet Annie too, just to fill this entire basket. Looks so cute anywhere on in the kitchen, in a little vignette on a shelf in your kitchen. Here's some of that extra paper that I had that I grunged up. I'm going to just crinkle that up just to kind of add a little height to the bottom, but I wanted that same kind of paper. I didn't want to put like anything different on the bottom, but you could add some Spanish moss or something else on the bottom too. But I just wanted to lift the little tea bags up a little bit. You can even make more of the tea bags. I only made 4 here, but you can make even more. And look at how darling this project turned out. I love this. It's just so cute and was such a fun project to make too. Last up for today's video, I have this plastic candy machine I got at Hobby Lobby a while ago on clearance for just a couple dollars. It's been sitting here in my craft room, and I figured I'd challenge myself to make something. I love to do this every so often with my videos, where for the last project I'll find something and kind of just have fun making something. I share that with you often. So I finally decided, you know what, I think this will be the perfect thing to make for the rest of this collection, and I wanted to give you this inspo too. And I figured I'm going to grunge this up to make it look like an old rusty candy machine. So if you've seen these before too, I have a bunch of them. I even got at Target years ago too, when they were really, really popular. And I had this one sitting here. I'm like, you know what? I think this will be the perfect thing to do. So I add a coat of Mod Podge, sprinkle it generously with cinnamon, and then dabbing Mod Podge on top. I mean, you've seen me do this time and time again, but the beauty of this method is it always makes it look different no matter what you do it on. Same method, but different project. And it just is so cool. And I cannot wait for you to see how this turns out. So if maybe you have one of these, sitting around that you want to kind of revamp or something similar, or just anything you could really do this with, just to give it that old rustic look. Again, just adding that Mod Podge, sprinkling it with cinnamon, dabbing Mod Podge on top. Now, often I like to say, and I've shared this in so many of my videos, putting it outside to dry, letting it bake in the sun, I love to do, but I'm speeding it up. I'm in my craft room, so I'm going to just use my heat gun. And so just going around in sections and applying that Mod Podge, sprinkling it generously with cinnamon, as you see here, and then dabbing Mod Podge on top. Now, because I'm not putting like a base on the bottom, I do go in little spots too where maybe the white's peeking through, and I'll go back in and add a little bit of that Mod Podge as well. But just once I get all over around it and it dries, gives us an old rusty look. And then I'm going to fill the inside with just a little bit of Spanish moss, but you could add anything. But just for the time being, I added some Spanish moss because this was a very impromptu project. I had this idea for the end, and I like to sometimes challenge myself to these projects. And this is just one of those things. If you're feeling crafty and you want to like make something, just find something that you may have laying around, maybe, in storage that you haven't used in a while, and just break it out and have fun and get creative with it and give it a whole new look. This was one of those things that I've had sitting on my shelf in my craft room for so long. I got this several years ago, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally going to craft with this. So maybe you're feeling crafty, you don't feel like going to Hobby Lobby or any of the craft stores, but you want to do some crafting and you have some of the crafting essentials like Mod Podge and cinnamon or whatever, and you like this look or whatever. It's just taking things that you have on hand and crafting with it to give it a fresh new look. So it's just fun, and it's a creative outlet, and for me, just a relaxing mommy time. That's something that I love to do when I have some time, is just to be able to craft. I always keep my extra cinnamon. I don't let that go to waste. I put it back in my crafting cinnamon jar. There it is done. Now I'm going to add a little bit of homespun, of course, to the base, and then I'm making a cute little stamp tag that says 5 cents, just using a piece of craft paper, and I'm just cutting the edges. I love using craft paper because then I can customize exactly the size of the label and the tag I want to do. I like to wrinkle it up and then adding a little bit of my antiquing wax around the edges and just giving it an old rusty look. And then I'm going to actually take some wire and attach it to the homespun. I could have hot glued it, but I don't know why. I took some wire, I guess. For this one, trimmed off that homespun. Look at how cute this turned out. For years it's been sitting on my shelf, and now it looks so cute. I'm also adding some dried sweet Annie. And then finally, I'm just filling it with some Spanish moss for the time being because, again, this was very impromptu. Just taking something and having fun and being creative with it. And this is the final result. It turned out so cute. Okay guys, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you got some crafting inspo too. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up if you did, and let me know in the comments which craft idea is your favorite or one that you plan on making too. I would love to know. And if you make any of these crafts or use the printables, I would love to see. Snap a picture and tag me over on Instagram at MotherTime. You can also follow me on social media at MotherTime. Check out my blog, mothertime.com. And if you've enjoyed this video and you are not subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to click that subscribe button so you never miss any of these videos. Okay, you guys, thanks again for hanging out with me here today, and I will see you guys very soon in the next video. Bye, guys.